is one slight problem with gaming on Linux, which is multiplayer games. And well, there are some alternatives, but really how many do we actually have? So I decided I kind of wanted to take a look at it. So like I started off looking at the top 10 games on Steam, and the results weren't great. Like I found that 5 out of 10 were basically games that worked out of the box or even worked at all on Linux, which that seems horrible, right? Because on one hand, you know, you have Counter-Strike 2, which was a number 1, and at time of recording, it has a 24-hour peak of 1.2 million players with a native Linux version, which is great. Same with Dota 2, number 2, Palworld. The top 3 games right now, they work. But then comes PUBG, doesn't work at all. Then comes EA Sports, FC 26, basically doesn't work. Only local multiplayer works. Rust, you have to go onto non-anti-cheat servers, which, you know, this sucks. It does suck. And then, you know, you got a couple more games. You got Path of Exile, works great. Apex Legends doesn't work at all. GTA 5 kinda works, and Dead by Daylight works great. So like you're stuck with 5 out of 10 games, and this looks horrible because this is 5 out of 10 games. What if you want to play, you know, Apex Legends? You can't do it. You just can't do it. So I wanted to look a little bit further into it, and I wanted to go into like the top 100 list, just to kind of see how many games are available, so to speak, on Linux. That is, you know. And which ones aren't. And I found the results to actually be rather interesting, because it went from being about 5 out of 10 to a pretty solid majority working. So I decided to put it down to 3 different categories. We have green, orange, and red. Green being games that work with little to no tinkering required. Orange being games that work but might require you to do a little bit of legwork yourself. And then red being obviously games that just do not work. And well, because Steam's, you know, the way Steam categorizes games isn't perfect, I'm removing a couple of them, because I think I can speak for most people when I say that I don't consider Binding of Isaac or Bongo Cats to be multiplayer games. But I will be adding some games outside of Steam as well, such as, you know, like League of Legends, Valorant, and Fortnite. Even though we all know they do not work on Linux, they are still very popular games, and I do think it is worth bringing up that they simply do not work. If these are games that you want to play, Counter-Strike or Dota, they might not be alternatives that you want. You just simply cannot play them. But let's just, I'm not gonna list every single green game, because there were 77 out of 105, which, I mean, that's pretty good statistics in my opinion. 77 out of 105, that's like 73%-ish, I believe. I came down to the numbers, and there were no, so I want to talk about the orange. I'm gonna show you guys all the green ones. You can just pause right here if you want to see them. I'm just gonna show them all up in like a list, and you guys can, you know, at least you guys can check that out. Just so, but I'm gonna move on to the orange ones, the games that kind of work but kind of don't. And to start it off with, we got Rust. Now, Rust, it works on Linux, but you have to play it on non-anti-cheat servers, which this does kind of suck, because this means that, well, yes, you can play the game, you might get a lot of extra cheaters as a result of it, which does suck. And most likely you're not going to want that, so I put it in kind of an orange/red, well, because it's technically playable. You're probably just not going to want to play it. And you got GTA 5. It has, from what I could find out, it has the point where multiplayer does work, but you have to turn off online lobbies and utilize invite-only lobbies, which does kind of, depending on your point of view, it does take away from the online game, but I think that, you know, it works, but not completely, so I'm putting it in orange. And Final Fantasy XIV Online. Now, this might be a bit of a controversial pick for the orange tier, because the game does work. Like, the game itself works fine, but the installation process is, and like the launcher, from my experience, is a bit of a hassle. So I put it in orange, although you could put it in green. I would be fine either way, but I put it in orange because I don't want to put things in green that might not necessarily deserve to be there. And then you have some of the Battle.net games. Now, I do want to point out that some of these games from Blizzard, like Diablo 2 and 4, they are available on Steam, and from my experience, there have been no problems at all. You just boot up the game and it works. The reason why, however, World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, Diablo 2, 3, 4, and StarCraft 2 are in the orange tier is simply because the Battle.net launcher, from my experience, is a pain in the fucking ass on Linux. It seems to me that every single time I want to try to use it, I have to use some new installation method. Sometimes I gotta use Bottle, sometimes I gotta use Lutris, sometimes I gotta use Fogus, and sometimes I just gotta use Proton. It's super weird to me. It works once I get it installed, but usually it's a pain in the ass to install. So I wanted to add that there. And then Forza Horizon 6, the game works, but it runs like absolute ass. So it's not the multiplayer component that isn't working, it's the game itself that just runs like absolute ass. And then NBA 2K26, I haven't tried this game personally, but seems it's sort of the same situation there, where the game works, but it just doesn't run great. And same kind of goes for Icarus. Game works, but the performance is dog shit. And I find that that's the more common problem with a lot of these games, that just it's the performance that just doesn't work. So rather than it not working in multiplayer, it's more like you're being cut off from performance. Like with Once Human, the game runs without a problem, except for the performance. Performance is really bad. And Scum, same. And then, you know, at this point we're out of orange games and on this list. So we're gonna walk into the red ones, games that just simply do not work. These games are just, there are a couple of like genres that are overly, you know, pointed out here, and there are. I'll talk a little bit about some of the examples of a game you might be able to play instead of them. But I do want to point out that just because there's an alternative doesn't mean you have to play it. If you want to play Valorant, you don't have to play Counter-Strike 2. It might not be a valid option for you, but it is an option. And, you know, I guess that'll be our first game in red. But we got PUBG and Apex Legends. I want to talk about these guys together because Battle Royale games, there's not a lot of options on Linux. This is one of the few genres where like there really isn't a lot, or pretty much anything from my experience, at least no good ones to me. I mean, if I'm wrong, feel free to tell me in the comments below. I'd love to know if there's any good Battle Royale games, but from my experience there's not. You got EA Sports FC26. You can play the game, you can play it locally, but multiplayer that's online not gonna work. You got Delta Force and Escape from Tarkov and Arena Breakout Infinite, another genre where you don't really have a lot of options on Linux. The only real option you have is Arc Raiders, so if that one's not your speed, you're kinda shit out of luck on Linux. And then you got games like Rainbow Six Siege. Not really a lot of great options. I mean, there aren't really many options outside of Rainbow Six Siege in terms of windows either for that game. It's a pretty unique game in how it plays. But and Battlefield 6, now depending on how you feel about it, you can find alternatives. Depends on what you like about Battlefield. If you like the arcade-ish type of gameplay, you're probably not going to be, but there are games like Arma games, they do work on Linux, and they can be a substitute, or like Squad. You know, these games, they can be a substitute for it, but it's also not quite the same. And then you got League of Legends and TFT. I kind of put these guys in together because as anyone who's played them knows, they're on the same client, so you know, one's blocked, the other one's also blocked. And League of Legends, you do have the option of playing Dota 2 instead, but again, it's not quite the same. The games are not, just because you like League of Legends does not mean you're gonna like Dota. If you do, that's a great alternative. If you don't, you're shit out of luck. And TFT, there really isn't any good alternative in general for it. So you just simply cannot play it. And, you know, it sucks, but that's how it is. Fortnite, another Battle Royale, doesn't work on Linux. Call of Duty doesn't work on Linux. Destiny 2 doesn't work on Linux. And Escape from Tarkov doesn't work on Linux. It does work in the single player offline mode. So I mean, I think it's safe to say that just from the Steam top 100 list, as well as a couple more sprinkled in, while there are definitely some genres that are lacking, overall multiplayer games on Linux is in quite a decent state. There's a couple of heavy hitters missing, but you'll find that most games that a lot of people are playing are perfectly viable as is. Because I mean, let's just look at the numbers. There's 77 greens, 14 oranges, and 14 reds. This means that out of 105 popular games, 77 of them work great. 14 work, but maybe not great, and 14 just don't work at all. This means that roughly 73% of multiplayer games that you might want to play work out of the box, while another 13% might just require a little bit of tinkering. Which to me, that puts us at a pretty solid, roughly 86%, or 91 out of 105 games. Obviously, this has no bearing on if you want to play some of these red games that just do not work. Because you might just want to play League of Legends, and Dota is not an alternative, or Valorant, and Counter-Strike is not an alternative. It does mean that the options are still there, but maybe Linux just isn't for you at this point. Maybe in the future that'll change, but right now, you shouldn't feel any pressure to swap operating systems if it cannot do what you need it to do. I just wanted to make this video to kind of showcase that you might think that... Because, like, let's put it like this, maybe you have like 5 or 6 games that you play, and maybe you don't really care that much about League of Legends, but you were really worried about, well, is Path of Exile gonna work? Is Dead by Daylight gonna work? Is War Thunder gonna work? Or is DayZ gonna work? And well, hey, all these games, they work fucking great. You don't have to worry about that. So, the options are there for you. But I do wanna... I want to just close off this video with the fact I just wanted to showcase the fact that while Linux might have a reputation for not being great for multiplayer, and in some ways that is absolutely true, because after all, most of the games in those are some heavy hitters, it's maybe not as bad as it seems. But yeah, so let me know in the comments what you guys thought about this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I just wanted to kind of get my thoughts out here. I'm planning on my next video probably being about VR gaming on Linux. That or video editing on Linux. I don't know. We'll see which one I decide to do. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope I see you guys next time. So let me know in the comments if you liked it. Have a good one.